We're just a specialist in telling your highlight reel. That's what we love to do. We come in and we say, talk to us about your highlight reel. Why do patients choose you? And then we start to get into those details of what we call qualifying research activities. And we just start to have a ton of fun. The next time you want to buy a piece of equipment, you don't have to think, am I going to drop my lifestyle in our family reunion so I can buy that?
You are entering lifestyle dentist territory where healthy, wealthy, generous dentists choose to live epic lives on their terms with freedom and fulfillment. I'm your host, Dr. Garth Hatch. Buckle up for another exciting episode.
Hello, lifestyle dentists. I am really looking forward to this podcast today. We have with us Scott Broadbent. And Scott, and make sure I'm saying Broadbent. Am I saying that right?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Thank you, Scott. Thanks for joining us. And Scott is the CEO of Acquired Tax Credits out of South Jordan, Utah. I came across his company this year. I was at an endo meeting in Salt Lake City and came across their business. I've heard of research and development credits in the past, but was not real familiar with them. And after getting to know their company and what they do, I was really impressed. In fact, I am, full disclosure, going to be using them myself this year and anticipating a big chunk back from backdated taxes. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. And they also, the way they do it, it's very thorough. They have got a great track record of making sure it keeps you out of audits, and if you do get audited, they will represent you at no extra fee, which is awesome. So that's pretty impressive. So they stand behind their services, and we can get more into it. But first, welcome to the show. Thanks for being with us, Scott.
Hey, thank you for having us on. We're excited to be here today and talk some shop with you.
Awesome. Well, just to start off, would you mind kind of walking through your background? What got you into doing research and development tax credits, in particular in the dental community?
Yeah, so really just a finance degree and working with as a financial representative most of my career for the last couple of decades, and doing a lot of consulting work on the tax and all of that, and working directly with a lot of our tax preparers. And we saw this quite a few years ago, and we looked at this and we said, hey, we really believe that we can make a big difference in the dental and medical community. And that was kind of our specialization already. And so, and it just kind of took over everything. We actually ended up selling off most of the consulting and all the other stuff just to focus here, because we found that we could make such a great difference in people's lives. And that there weren't a lot of companies servicing this. That I think that's one of the craziest things is, as we were looking at your stuff, right? You focus on dental lifestyle, right? So really time and income, and how do I control those so I lead my best life, but at the same time I make enough money that I can get where I need to go. Which, by the way, everybody, the first two times we got introduced to Dr. Hatch, he's running through some jungle and through the woods with his GoPro, and I was laughing. I said, I think we're meeting with Tarzan, because he's ripped, and he's running through. It was amazing, by the way. But I love that, because that speaks to your lifestyle dentist, that you're able to go do some of those fun adventures and at the same time work and do all your stuff. So you're living your dream, which is what we love.
Well, thank you, Scott. I appreciate that. And really, from my standpoint, one of the biggest things I found out was how challenging and also beneficial the tax code can be, especially as a professional, as a dentist, that it's our biggest expense for most people. And when you can have experts like you on our side kind of helping us guide through the maze of the tax code, there's a lot of beneficial things that are in there that they're not, people call them loopholes, but they're right there in plain English in the code. It's just most people, including most CPAs, aren't familiar with them or don't know how to use them. And so, companies like Amazon can make whatever billions and trillions and pay very little to no taxes at times, and dentists are paying quite a bit. And so I think it's just having a better team, for one, around you and that understands the tax code and how to use it in your favor.
And I think you said it best, having an expert in your corner. I mean, tax preparers are one of our number one referring sources, because once they learn that we have this service that can be rendered to their clientele, they go, oh my gosh, could you get everybody and have them interview through to see who's eligible and who's not? Because it's for the people that subscribe to you, Dr. Hatch, and really try to improve their practice, right? Their products, their processes, their systems, techniques. They're always trying to better that patient care. We're a perfect fit for them. And they likely would qualify. I mean, obviously, I got to give you our kind of couple quick disclosures that we don't give tax advice, that it really is dependent upon the interview as to whether or not you qualify. This is one of those things you qualify with. We work directly with your tax preparer. That is our guiding light on the tax side of the house. We are just a specialist in telling your highlight reel. That's what we love to do. We come in and we say, talk to us about your highlight reel. Why do patients choose you over others? And then we start to get into those details of what we call qualifying research activities. And we just start to have a ton of fun with that. I always think I love reading about you because I feel like it's practical, common sense solutions or an approach to being a business owner. And I think that if you're looking to use us, we're just one facet of that helps facilitate. Because the next time you want to buy a piece of equipment, you don't have to think, am I going to drop my lifestyle and our family reunion so I can buy that? No. Let the research and development hopefully trigger a benefit there that helps you get that paid for. So now your business gets to progress and you get to still do your family reunion, which means your spouse probably doesn't make you sleep on the couch tonight.
I love it. Well, and really, I think most dentists, me included, because this is the first year that I'm going to be filing for a previous year with you guys. I'm doing research and development on a regular basis. We will switch products all the time, because one product is a better quality or more efficient or safer for the patient. We will upgrade our equipment, our cone beams and sensors and apex locators and all kinds of different equipment that we use, ultrasonics or lasers, all kinds of things that are going to be better for whatever reason, or we may not be sure. We may be testing between what we currently have and what we buy and see if there's a difference. And so most dentists are doing research and development on a regular basis. They just don't know that they're calling it that, and that there's tax benefits.
Well, and I think you spoke right there to the greatest myth that we see out there is when people think of research and development, they think cancer research, new pharmaceutical development, published, right? And they think, I don't do that, so I don't qualify. And that's a huge myth. What you were just describing right there are great qualifying activities. That addressment in the 4-part test of my permitted purpose being that I'm trying to align myself and do comparisons for a better patient outcome is the basis of the whole thing. And then what uncertainties does that create, and how am I experimenting to address that, right? Those are key elements to really understanding where you fit. And then technologically, that we're in the biological sciences, and it's a nice qualifying area. And but you need a specialist. I mean, we had a group down in Scottsdale, Arizona. Loved them to death, big doctor group, and they've been clients of ours for now probably 7-8 years. I think we've written stuff for them back as far as 2016. But when they said, we're doing R&D, and I go, well, we want to work with your accounting team, and they were just switching, and they said, hey, our accountant just writes off a flat $50,000 a year. And I go, well, how are you substantiating it? What activities are you using to justify that? And they sent us over a 2-page report from the tax preparer firm. Bless their hearts. They were doing their best. We finished their year, I think this last year, 1,400-page report. So telling your story correctly and doing it when you have 30, 40 activities and you're a little bit bigger like them, it just takes somebody who's specialized, who knows you, who comes in. And a lot of our general dentists, it's 6 to 8 activities that you probably have that are hiding inside of what you're just routinely doing, the nuances, the iterative modifications that you're constantly doing. I talked to one guy, he goes, I definitely don't do it. And I said, well, let's interview, let's just talk. By the time we were done, he goes, I had no idea that my iterative modifications and my continuing pursuit of excellence qualified. And I said, yeah, in the activities we discussed, it absolutely does. So yeah, the myths are always there. But once you've kind of addressed that and done that, you find it's really a fun credit to pull into your practice. It becomes a fun nuance because you start to challenge yourself on areas where you go, I could probably improve there. I've been kind of ignoring it because it's going to cost some money, and I'll do that at this time. And all of a sudden, now you have a means to an end, and you create this kind of fun circle of life, right? You innovate, we record it and get it to you. Your tax preparer files it, and all of a sudden there's this monetary piece. And so all of a sudden your need or want or desire to innovate starts to get faster and faster. And we see that after a couple of years, Dr. Hatch, where people really start to embrace that. I'll get to the end of last year and a guy calls me up and he goes, I'm totally buying these 3 things I've been looking at for the last 6 months. I'm doing my comparison. I've been wanting to make this. I just did it. He goes, I already know that that's going to create additional qualifying activities, which means I'm going to get some of those dollars back. It's going to help me through the whole process, which is wonderful.
That's awesome. On that note, Scott, can you give a couple of practical examples, like from different clients you work with? You don't have to give specifics, but what are some common things that a dentist could use that would qualify for research and development?
So I actually have one that we just shared with a group. Can I share it on my screen and just
Please.
show you? So we create, when we're trying to tell your story, we create what we call a business component map. So under the section 41, they're called business components. We call them, or we name them, qualifying research activities, because people can understand that lingo, the tax lingo, what we call layman's terms, right? So this was one, we were looking at zirconia brands on the crowns, and they were looking at Ivoclar, Katana, 3M, those 3 that they were doing some kind of comparison. And this is just kind of a short summary. So the uncertainty existed about which crown brands would yield the most optimal clinical performance. Now, obviously, this is with posterior and anterior teeth, right? So we got into a lot more details than what you see here. But they were kind of looking at tracking the outcome of failures, strength, obviously your tension, right? And then the aesthetic compatibility, which, as you know, zirconia has a wide range. And in the last year or 2, you're seeing a lot of zirconia actually make it into the anterior teeth sometimes, where it's usually just always been, say, an Emax or something like that, right? Where and people people always want the best, right? I want it to last forever, and I want it to hold, right? And there's a lot of pieces that go into there that make that. But that's a great example of one. Bone grafts have always been a huge one if you do implants in your practice, right? This is one we were looking at, the particle size and the combination thereof of mineralized cortical and medullary allograft bone along with membrane material, which would yield the best clinical outcomes. So they were looking at how quickly could they utilize that bone graft, and they were testing time frames and just looking at that, and they were just playing with a bunch of different things. In the bone graft, you get a lot of different variables, right, that people are adding. Sometimes we've seen double membranes, we've seen hard versus soft versus, the soluble. You just get a lot of variations, and everybody has a very specific opinion on it. It's really fascinating, and it works for them, and it works in their practice. And so, but the uncertainty in what manufacturers are bringing to the table in dentistry always kind of lends to that, right? You're on that cutting edge, and there's a lot of people constantly bringing new developments to look at. Some don't work out, some do. Yeah, like if let's say you're doing ortho inside your practice. I mean, Ormco put out Damon brackets a long time ago, right? And we did one real practical one on somebody that was looking at Damon Ultima. And it was funny, over the course of a few weeks, we interviewed about 2 or 3 different practices that we're looking at, and some of them absolutely threw the Ultima out because they didn't like the customization that they could do with their own hands, which Damon, the standard version, still, and Q2 still allowed that to happen. And then some people were like, hey, the Ultimate was the best thing since sliced bread. I had less of this and less of that. It took out some of the variability. And sometimes you saw dentists that loved that because they felt like that they could custom pull that in line a little better. So you get a lot of variations or nuanced things like that all the way across in endo, all the way across the board, oromaxillofacial, your cosmetic dentistry, all of those have these little cute nuances, if you will, that we love to come in and tell that story.
That's awesome. That's awesome. On that note, say somebody said, well, I didn't buy any big equipment this year, and I was comparing several different crowns, to see which would be the best crown. But, if I added up, I don't know, maybe my lab bill was 40 grand, 50 grand.
Right.
It may not be worth doing R&D in a case like that. What would you say, in a situation like that?
I would, we have a cute little slogan with a disclaimer that, maybe you will qualify, maybe you won't. We need to visit with you. But it says, hey, 30 minutes could save you $30,000. I say don't throw out the baby with the bathwater when maybe there's something there. Because how we calculate it is custom to every single client because we work directly with your tax preparer. So that $40,000 in labs might be worth $3,000 or $4,000 in credits that you might have given up. Now, I will tell you this: we try to strive to get people at about $30,000, 25, 30 at a minimum, and going up from there. Which usually means we try to say, hey, we really want you close to $1 million in gross revenue in your practice. Because what we have found is the value prop for them from that and above. I mean, 800,000-900,000, you're on that. Let's visit, because maybe you have a little more spend or a little something extra in your employee or whatever, because you're trying to grow and you're committing a few more resources, and so you get there a little quicker. Because once we've kind of looked at your activities, let's say you're doing the crowns or you're doing that bone graft, we are starting to create kind of a foundation for a house where we have activity after activity after activity that we've qualified and said, hey, we can support that, we can substantiate that.
That's awesome.
The expenses that drop in on top of that, those are the dollars that drop in on top of that. Those are really where you might have a higher spend. For example, taking dentistry, an orthodontic office has one of the highest spends because they have the highest staff costs, right? So when they're looking at an activity, they're just going to have more participating individuals than say a typical GP would. And a GP usually has quite a bit of staff, but an endo won't. They run pretty lean and mean. And so depending on which specialty you are or what you're doing in your practice, you'd be surprised. A lot of times, most people, when they get their number back from, we've looked at their CPA and we've talked through the numbers, we've got the activities, we've dropped in those expenses on that foundation, it surprises a lot of people.
On that note, too, can you speak more on that? Is it, just so I'm understanding to myself, is it just the cost of the supplies or also the cost, because you've obviously got, you got your staff that's going to be helping with the research, I mean, what all counts toward that number, of R&D?
Great question. So your lead researcher, which is usually the premier dentist in the practice, obviously there's usually your dental assistants, maybe sometimes your front office staff, sometimes not, depending on whether or not they come and assist in the back. So whoever has that patient involvement, we're going to be able to pull a time component, and then you take their salary, you take a portion of that time, and that's going to be qualified across those activities. And then the dental supply, obviously my lab fees, my other stuff that I'm buying in-house. Some dentists that use outside contractors, that we don't see that very often unless maybe anesthesia related, but sometimes those are really unique protocols. So we've done a few things along that line. So really your staff expenses, your contractors, and your dental supply is where most of the bulk of those qualifying research expenditures come from.
That makes sense. And for mine, it is an endo office, but we've got a larger team. We got 2 locations and a larger staff team. But it was well over the 30 grand, and I was pretty happy after we did our review.
You're this number 4, root canal optimization, right? There's always anybody who tells me that they're static. I always say, no, you're not. You just aren't looking closely at your practice. But look at all this stuff: the filing system, Chlorhex, EDT. I mean, all of these things that we were looking at, and just an optimization protocol. We have found that in endo, there is so many burr developments that make just the teeniest of difference, but make, and I mean, the drills that are sensitive, right? Because you're trying to preserve the gum, right? And more of the soft tissue, and just those finite little modifiers that end up being fewer failure rates, right? Over the course of the year. And those are qualifying events that, if you'll allow us, we'll come tell your story on that.
Yeah, well, and I love that because I 100% agree. I mean, most dentists, they're striving to do the very best care they can. They want the best for their patients. They want to have the best equipment that's gonna help with that. And there's always new gadgets coming out. Sometimes we're not sure if it's going to be better or not. And that's essentially, you are doing the R&D right then when you're comparing what you're doing now or what you did in dental school with a newer technology, and see which is really going to be better.
Right. And it seems so obvious, but yet sometimes so you just don't realize it, right? That I think that's one of the main things. Dr. Hatch, one of the things I get asked a lot is, they go, why didn't my CPA tell me this, right? Because if it's so obvious, why did their tax preparer not tell them? And I was visiting with a tax preparer that had about 1,000 clients and a good staff. He goes, let me put it in perspective for you. He goes, I want to plan with them. And I do to what the extent I can, but if I gave every client 2 hours of my time, that'd be 2,000 hours. That's my year. He goes, that's 40 hours a week. He goes, when do I prepare your taxes? And so what we find is, we want to be that companion, that expert assist, specializing in our narrow niche, watching the tax preparer guide us on whatever the tax implications are, because they ultimately file and do all that. But we love to be the prep team and that little niche work.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've definitely seen that in my own experience, and those I've consulted with. That most CPAs they're great, and they're great at filing your taxes, but they either don't have the knowledge or the time to be great tax strategists, And so that's where you really need specific experts on tax strategy and expert knowledge in the tax code, so that you can get some of these different benefits that your average CPA is not familiar with.
Yeah, and what I know is, experts love experts, because they feel like, hey, if you've been doing this a lot of years and you've run down that path, and we get this feedback from our tax preparers, because you said earlier, hey, they'll stand behind it. Yeah, we put in writing, hey, if you get asked or get an inquiry from the IRS because you filed one of these, please let us work with your tax preparer. We want to do the response. What we're seeing on that landscape, and this is probably worth addressing, because audit risk is always the biggest question everybody has, is, hey, if 100%. I go down this road, do I have audit risk? The answer is 100% yes. You always, when you go out to dinner tonight and you claim that, you have audit risk that somebody could challenge you on that, and maybe you don't have the documentation for it. So our approach is, if we can substantiate it, means I can go back to your general ledger to an invoice, or I can go back to your W-2 records, and I can prove that. What our tax attorneys have told us is, any time that they've represented somebody nationally on something like this, on a larger credit, if they could substantiate it, it's usually, well, I can tell you what our guy out of Texas said. He says 100% of the time the IRS has accepted it. He goes, they're looking for a bad player that's not following the rules, right? The most recent thing we've seen is what they call a 6426 form, where the IRS sees that you did a credit, and they put out a request for additional information. So it's not even an audit. It's just, hey, can you verify that what you did? And we've probably responded to 40 plus of those over the last couple of years, and knock on wood, as far as we know, all of them have been accepted.
That's awesome.
So we're seeing a pretty light environment out there with our tax preparers and that. In the last decade of writing these reports, we've only seen, Dr. Hatch, 2 people that were randomly picked for an audit on their operating company. So we didn't trigger it, hallelujah. And they noticed they had a credit, so we got what we call an IDR, an information document request. That's probably a formal, hey, we want to look at what you did. We sent in, the last one was a couple years ago, because we've only seen a handful, and hundreds and hundreds of reports. So, but We responded to that one, and in 90 days, we got a letter from the IRS saying, hey, we accept this.
That's
So
awesome.
we've seen a great track record. So if you're sitting there with your tax preparer and you're going, maybe I should call my tax preparer right now and tell them we should need to do this. I would tell you, talk to us first. And if you want to know why, it's because I have often seen that your tax preparer, what is their job? Their job is to protect you, to protect you, to protect you, right? So they're always nervous about it. And if they're a smaller mom and pop shop, they probably don't do a lot of R&D. If they're a big regional shop, absolutely. I mean, go on Ernst & Young's site and just type in research and development credits. You'll see they have tons of resources. I don't think they have a medical specialist team, but they do a lot of work in the space. And a lot of your larger groups are very familiar with it. But a lot of our dentists, they don't use Ernst & Young because it's so expensive. They're using the guy down the street, the local one. He has a local presence. That's the typical tax preparer. So we say, hey, let us visit with you and talk you through some of the steps, and then let us have that professional conversation with them, because we want them on the same page with us. I know that sounds crazy, but we actually we would struggle to say yes to you if you didn't let us talk to your tax preparer. We want them in that conversation from the start. That should tell you so much about who we are. We want the people making the biggest decisions in your life, which taxes are one of the big ones, because it directly affects your lifestyle, right, and your income.
Yes. Yeah.
We want them right there on the front lines with us the whole way through the process. And so we say, hey, don't call we've had once in a while, they'll call up their CPA, and the CPA goes, well, you might get audited. And they go, oh, I don't want to be audited. And I go, wait a minute. Did you not take like 200 business deductions, all of which are auditable? Everything has an audit risk. We believe ours is very vanilla. And that's the way it seemed to have proved out over the last quite a few years of doing this.
Yeah. I love Tom Wheelwright's, he's the author of Tax Free Wealth by Tom Wheelwright, and worked with his firm for several years. And one thing a couple things, but I love how he says something that's risky to one CPA may be very conservative, total middle of the fairway to another CPA or tax expert because they understand the tax code. And it's like, why would you not take tax deductions that you're totally eligible for because maybe in a 10 or 20 year period you get audited once? It makes no sense. You should take it and have good representation, good CPAs that stand behind you, and they're going to help you if something did happen. Something else he said that I totally agree with was never talk by yourself to the IRS. If you ever get audited, you have your expert.
Isn't that 101, right?
Yeah.
Don't jump on that call and do that. Let your preparer call. They've done it hundreds of times, and the chances of them having a great outcome and you having a great outcome, maybe it's only 2-3% difference, but really 2-3% of the time, do you really want to go through those extra steps? So grab your tax preparer and let us have that conversation. Bring the experts into your corner, so when you're making that decision, something like audit in this space isn't scary. It's evaluated properly, and you know where you stand. And hey, if you can substantiate it, a great tax attorney wrote an article for us about 2, 3, 4 years ago, and I said, could you write an article to CPAs that are considering this for their client? And he wrote, the title is like, substantiate, substantiate, substantiate. If you get with a firm that knows how to do this, he goes, you aren't going to have issues. He goes, it's just interview them about their process. Make sure they're going through all the right steps, that they're not cutting corners. Obviously, a lot of people have seen in their lifetime people that do it really well and people that do things average, right? And we always want to go back and do the one that does it well. We want to do that again and again and again, because we love the experience. We felt protected. We felt like everything was well. And by the time you're done, there's just big smiles on your face. That even gets into, Dr. Hatch, how we even bill. There's always the adage in our industry. People go, well, don't you just bill a percentage of your credits? And we go, well, if you do that, you didn't read Section 41, where the IRS says, hey, and they give kind of a formulation on how they think you ought to bill. And so we bill more on the time and a bunch of algorithmic things on what we think it's going to take the scope of your project to get it done. And Wouldn't you rather have somebody that does it that way so that we get to the end and I just happen to, I'll give you a perfect example. We had a doctor in California, and the prior year he'd had good credit, and he grew his bit, I mean, just really grew like 200%. Just, he figured out some things, opened up another office, and everything just went bigger. And we had looked at our algorithm. We felt like our time on the project was still X plus, maybe it was 5-6% difference on that year. He ended up with, I think, 150,000 more in credits, and I think we billed maybe an extra $1,500. But we felt like we did great. He called me up. He goes, "This is the best thing I've ever done. Your bill's so low." And I laughed. I said, "Hey, we have our formulation. We try to follow a good guideline. You were just the benefactor of a lot of upside there."
Well, on that note too, Scott, what would happen if you interview a dentist, go through their specific situation, and your firm thinks, okay, I think based on X, Y, and Z, you're probably eligible, we're estimating, for a $50,000 tax credit with R&D. And they pay the fee and go through the process, and for whatever reason, they were denied that benefit. What would happen in a case like that?
So we've never seen somebody denied yet. What we have seen is we had a tax preparer missed filing, and they lost the deadline. You know what we did? We said this, and this has always been our motto: if we don't see you monetize a benefit, we're not interested in one either. So we actually knew we lost money on that, and we called them up and we said, "Hey, I'm writing you a check for your initial fee." And the guy goes, I'll never forget, he goes, "I'm going to be with you for life." He goes, "That is the nicest thing, because I already know you did the work." And I go, "I know we did the work, but we're only interested," and it wasn't our fault. We had 5 reminders. We had talked to the tax, I mean, even the client had, I mean, unfortunately the client went on to another tax preparer because of that. But that's somewhat just life, right? Life's never just perfect. We've done this so many times that we see that there's just a lot of imperfections in people and how they adjudicate this. So we just said, "Hey, if you don't make it, we aren't interested in charging on it." And that kind of lends to how we charge. We charge you a portion of the fee up front, because, hey, let us know you're serious, and it helps me pay for that staff cost, which a lot of our work is all in the details up front. Once we've created this kind of map that's laid out here, we charge you our second phase. Once your tax preparer is finished and we've confirmed that it's been filed, so right, everything's in, it's beautiful. I mean, I just sat this afternoon with a tax preparer, first time doing R&D for their client, and they were in Drake software, so there's a fun reference for you. And Drake's great, but it defaulted to where one of the forms, it has kind of a funky default, and it only gave them a portion of the credit. So we talked the tax preparer through it. They made the adjustment. The dentist got all of it. The tax preparer was super excited about that, and she just said, "Thank you for helping me walk that through." So our phase 3 payment is, let's make sure everything is done. And then the fourth one, we base it on 2 things: either you received your money, or a length of time where we feel like you've probably received your money. And we usually we have some things where we're talking to your tax preparer, "Hey, did you follow up?" Everybody goes, "What would you follow up on an amended return like this?" And we go, 100%. I can tell you at least a dozen conversations where our tax preparers called the IRS and they've said, "Hey, it's just sitting in my queue." And they go, "Okay." And the tax preparer goes, "Would you like me to prioritize that?" And the tax preparer goes, "Please." And then about 90 days later, it's resolved out. So we found that the IRS actually is there to help you guys, and a little bit of back and forth can be actually very productive. That's been our experience, and that's hundreds and hundreds of times calling tax preparers. I mean, that story about prioritization, you guys think I'm just telling you a one-off? I can tell you at least 15 times in the last 6 months I've had that call. And it's the funniest thing, because they say the same thing over and over again. So we actually think a proactive approach to help you get everything through. Our fee structure is so that we ride that boat all the way into the dock with you. We like to know. Our favorite, I mean, Dr. Hatch, one of my favorites is when I get text messages where the guy goes, I never thought it was real. And they text us a picture of the check. And we laugh. We're like, we probably shouldn't be sending that over your phone, but that's fine. It's great. But congratulations. It's always fun for us to see people receive those dollars.
Yeah. Well, I compare it to, buying $100 bill for $20, how many of those do you want to buy? I want to buy all I can,
Yeah, I'm looking in my pocketbook. Can I get some extras, right?
Yeah. It just seems like a no-brainer, especially when it's in the tax code. And that's another thing, it's not like it's some, sly, shady thing. It's in the tax code for reasons because they have incentives. There's incentives to invest in real estate because the government wants housing for citizens. They obviously want investment in R&D because it improves patient outcomes. It's safer. There's all kinds of benefits when they do research and development, and so they're just rewarding those incentives. You just have to know about the incentives.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the code, some planning activities that your tax preparer might be talking are interpretations of what they think it means, right? Ours is pretty straight, white and black, guys. It says in there, you do these 4 things, you're going to qualify, make sure you can back it up, and they give examples. We've got memos from the IRS. They're actually very helpful from what we think about trying to give us clear guidelines on how to organize it so that you have a very nice soft landing. And that's kind of how we see it, is it's a little more black and white than other stuff. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I want to be respectful of your time, Scott, but before we finish, what have I not asked you that I probably should have, or anything else you want to add?
Well, I'm going to use a comment you made a couple minutes back. You said, it kind of feels like a no-brainer. And this was a number of years ago. He spoke for Ormco all over the country. And he calls me up and he says, I was sitting there telling people about this new latest and greatest on the Ormco's, and he was a big orthodontist. And he goes, I just looked at the audience and said, guys, like I did this and it was a no-brainer. And he goes, can I use that? And I was like, yeah, why not? I really feel like, why would you not give us 15 minutes to explore this with you and kind of give you a layout? That's a couple minutes out of your lunch. Let us visit with your tax preparers. Let us talk to you about these qualifying activities and tell us about your practice. Tell us your story. It's the funnest part. Is I know every dentist loves to tell us why they're doing great. And we love to capture that. So I would say, go with the no-brainer approach of, hey, explore this. Let's grab your tax preparer. Let's do this wonderful gel. And the funnest part about it is, guess what? We spend all the time. A guy asked me, he goes, is this going to take like 20, 30, 40 hours of my time every year? Because if so, I just don't know if I have it. I have family obligations. Maybe they have church. I got civic duties. He goes, and when I'm not doing that, work has got me just, and then I like to golf, or I like to go out and adventure, or I'm a hiker, or whatever they love to do. Pickleball, that seems to be the latest craze. But we say, listen, it's only going to take a few hours of your time because we will do all the heavy lifting. That is our specialty. You have teams of people that work with you, writers, medical professionals, our sales group, and then all of these guys that are surrounding you to tell your story. And we've told it hundreds and hundreds of times, and so we feel like we're pretty good. If you can give us, hey, I'm doing this iterative modification in that product, process, the system, my technique, we feel like we can come behind you and tell that story. And a lot of it is process change. Maybe it's technology. That always has an aspect inside of here that's worth exploring, that we love to take a look at inside of people's practices. There's just a lot of things you do to help your patient that you just didn't realize had an attached tax credit benefit, and we love that.
Well, you've got a great team. My conversation was very pleasant. It didn't take a long time, and it was they took it and were able to do quite a bit more, and it seemed very thorough with how they do the process. So I was really impressed.
Well, thank you for that.
No, absolutely. Well, on that note, if somebody is interested in learning more about getting, filing for tax credits and R&D tax credits, how would they One other question too on that note too, because I know it may not just be for 2025. Like, how far back could you go? You know, right now it's May of 2026, but how far back could you go to, you know, potentially get amended returns for R&D?
Yeah, so if you're sitting here in May, you probably about 95% of our dentists are all on extension, right? So you have until September 15th of this year, and you can go back as far as 2022.
That's awesome.
That window will close as you get close to, after September 15th, but it's available to you. And the funnest part about that is as you get multiple years, the tax form has at least 4 or 5 or 6 different ways to take the credit and over multiple years. And so as you get more years, the IRS has some additional ways to calculate an additional benefit for you once you hit about that 4th year. So a lot of times looking back at 22, 23, 24, it's almost a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you capture that, bring it into my present? I'll finish with this story. I had a guy, he's trying to build out an office and he needed about $1 million. That was his money commitment, and a little bigger. And so we were helping them. We got with their tax preparer. We're all sitting on this conference call, and they had done it in 23, 24. A bunch of that was rolling forward because they just started to have some really good years. And we found over $500,000 for each of the 2 partners, and they came up with their $1 million. I mean, maybe we were $50,000 short, or something like that. But they said, guys, this is, as soon as we get this pulled together, and when 2025, I know you're on extension. What if that 50,000 that you kind of talked about earlier? What if you realize that you could get that and file? Now all of a sudden you don't want to wait till September. You're like, can I have that done in June? In April 15th, you already paid all your tax. So you're paid in, and somebody's dangling a carrot that 2 weeks from now you can have that $50,000. I mean, absolutely. Get a hold of us by either going on our website, acquiretaxcredits.com. Shoot, call my executive assistant. I'll give you her phone number and she'll schedule you somebody. 801-441-2824. I think we have an 800 number on there you can call directly, and somebody will pick you up between 8 and 5. We can get you right there and just do your 15-minute, just, hey, welcome to R&D, and here's what it's going to look like for you specifically. And let's see if we can tell your story, right? Let's find out what your story is and put it on the front stage. One last one. It was a really funny one. We did a dentist. He was here local, and we finished with him, and he got about 50 grand, and he was laughing as we were on the call. It was 3 or 4 partners. He goes, I just bought my boat. And I go, you bought a boat? He goes, yeah. And he goes, I think I just paid it off. And I kind of got a chuckle out of it. We don't know what you're going to use your dollars for. We want you to use some in your practice. But it was really cute to see that somebody who is already down a personal path of getting a boat, that we helped facilitate. It was just fun. So let's get you a boat.
Love it. Well, that was amazing. Thank you so much, Scott. And I look forward to, we're going to be connecting later today too with just our mastermind members on the call, and go a little deeper, a little more intimate. So looking forward to that. So thank you so much, my friend, and look forward to talking to you soon.
You too. Thank you, Dr. Hatch. Take care.
Have a great day. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.